You know, every once in a while, a life comes along that perfectly embodies what people call the American dream. Colin Luther Powell's story is one of those lives. Born on April 5th, 1937 in Harlem, New York City, Colin was the son of Jamaican immigrants, Luther and Maud Powell. They didn't have much. His father worked as a shipping clerk, his mother as a seamstress. They raised their boy in the rough streets of the South Bronx. Now, Colin wasn't a star student, not at all. He used to joke about it himself, said he was just an average kid. Quiet, observant, not someone anyone thought would change the world. But sometimes, greatness hides in plain sight. When Colin got to high school, he still didn't know what he wanted to do with his life. Then, in college, at the City College of New York, he stumbled into something that would define him forever, the ROTC, Reserve Officers Training Corps. The first time he put on that uniform, he felt something click. Structure, purpose, belonging. He later said, "I liked the sense of being part of something bigger than myself." That's when everything changed. In 1958, Colin graduated and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army. What followed was a journey that would span over 3 decades and take him to the very top. Vietnam was where he first saw the harsh reality of war. He served 2 tours. During the second, in 1968, his helicopter crashed in the jungle. He was hurt, but instead of thinking about himself, he pulled his fellow soldiers out of the burning wreckage. For that, he earned the Soldier's Medal, but to him, it was just doing his duty. Vietnam shaped him. It taught him how costly war really is, and it planted the seeds of what later became the famous Powell Doctrine. Never go to war unless you have a clear objective, overwhelming force, and the support of the people. Back home, he kept rising, commanding units in Korea, working at the Pentagon, even becoming a White House fellow under President Nixon. Step by step, the quiet kid from the Bronx was becoming one of the most trusted military minds in America. By the 1980s, he was everywhere. Senior roles under presidents, shaping U.S. defense policy, advising leaders at the height of the Cold War. And then, in 1989, history was made. Colin Powell became chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest-ranking officer in the entire U.S. military, and the first African American ever to hold that position. But it was the Gulf War of 1991 that put him on the world stage. When Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, Powell, alongside Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney and President George H.W. Bush, crafted the plan that became Operation Desert Storm. The strategy was clear, the force was overwhelming, and the war was swift. In just 6 weeks, Kuwait was liberated. Powell's cautious, calculated approach earned him worldwide respect. He could have retired a hero right there. But Colin Powell wasn't done. In 2001, President George W. Bush appointed him as Secretary of State, the first African American ever to serve in that role. Suddenly, the soldier became America's top diplomat. Then came 9/11. The world changed overnight, and Powell was at the center of America's response. He worked to build international coalitions for the war in Afghanistan. But in 2003, things took a painful turn. Powell went before the United Nations, presenting evidence that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. That evidence turned out to be wrong. Powell later called that moment a blot on his record, one he deeply regretted. Despite that, his reputation as a man of honor never faded. He retired in 2005, but continued to inspire as a speaker, an advocate for education, and a voice of reason in American politics. On October 18th, 2021, Colin Powell passed away at the age of 84. The world mourned him, not just as a soldier, not just as a statesman, but as proof that integrity, perseverance, and service can take you from the humblest beginnings to the heights of history. Colin Powell once said, "Leadership is solving problems. The day soldiers stop bringing you their problems is the day you have stopped leading them." For him, leadership was never about power. It was about responsibility. And he carried that responsibility with courage, with grace, and with a quiet strength that will never be forgotten.